Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Manuj Aggarwal, who is the founder of Tetra Noodle. Manuj, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited about this.
So, first of all, before we get into your area of expertise, which is very vast from reading your bio, I love seeing your vast experience, but what in the world is a Tetra Noodle?
So, Tetra Noodle is my consulting company and training company. I started this company about 20 years ago. Back then it was called Spider Communications, when World Wide Web was just sort of a new thing. So I thought it was a catchy name back then, but in 2015 or so, it wasn't as novel, and people used to get confused about what the company is all about. So I changed it to Tetra Noodle, sitting in a restaurant called Noodle Box. So I was just sort of trying to think of a name, and that restaurant was sort of the inspiration behind the name.
Oh, neat. Yeah, it's always neat to hear the stories behind of names. And back before Amazon was Amazon, I'm sure that people thought, what in the world is an Amazon? It's a river so now we know it as the Amazon of what it is. So yeah, your story is really neat that way. So what is the main focus of your firm? You help startups, but what is the main focus that you help them accomplish?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, we provide consulting services on software and IT. So that includes everything from conception stage to product launch, research, building a team, managing the team, and sort of figuring out what needs to be built, prioritizing it. I mean, end-to-end technology execution. And we specifically focus on startups, and I've had vast experience working on startups as well as very large-scale projects with Fortune 500 companies. But I try to stick with startups. They are more exciting, more it's more creative process working with startups. What I have found is there are so many misconceptions among entrepreneurs and founders about what it takes to launch a startup or make it successful. So I try to sort of, I try to work around those misconceptions. One of the big misconceptions is that you need to raise millions of dollars in order to start your startup. So, I've had success where I've been able to help entrepreneurs launch their startups with, say, $25,000 or $30,000, where earlier on they were thinking about mortgaging their house and sort of, putting up the money to build software. And I was able to reduce the costs drastically using some of the methods that I use, which are very pragmatic, very simple methods. And that's what we do. And then on the training side, we train software engineers on cutting edge technologies. Once again, the education that they get in universities and other institutes, it's kind of like more on the theoretical side or biased towards the vendor who's educating the engineers. So we try to give them real world hands-on education so that as soon as they learn from us, they are job ready, basically.
One thing you mentioned I wanted to go a little bit deeper on, because when you hear the phrase startup, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And, bootstrapping, like you mentioned, it doesn't take hundreds of thousands. Maybe you can get it down to the 25,000. But do you work mostly with people that have done startups in the past? Because I know that there's a trend these days with kind of like a side hustle, and someone works the corporate job and they wonder if they could start their own firm. But it sounds to me like you are working with people that are kind of like already an entrepreneur. Now they want to start a new venture as opposed to someone coming out of corporate life.
No. As I said, I work with pretty much everyone who has a vision and know what they're doing. As long as they have some definition of what they want to achieve, I work with them. Like I've worked with many solopreneurs or even people who have a side hustle. In fact, I'm working on a couple of projects right now with people who are in corporate jobs, but they want to launch their own apps. So there is no, like, I don't have any criteria other than, they must have some sort of a vision, and it should have some, they should be grounded in reality. Like, some founders have these misconceptions of becoming billionaires within a couple of years, which, is kind of unrealistic expectation.
Yes.
I mean, it may happen by the stroke of luck, but if it's a sort of a preconceived notion that, this thing is going to go to a $1 billion level, generally people are focused on wrong things in that case. Like they're focused on money, which is not the right sort of approach to what I do. I focus on providing value to the customers and then, organically growing the startup and someday it can become something really big.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm glad you clarified that, because I just see so much in the industry today that there is a huge movement of people that feel like that side hustle is something they can do a little bit on the side, but then it quickly becomes a passion, and then they want to move into that full time. So they have no clue how to do it. And for someone like yourself to help them come in and be very precise and learn how to expedite that really quickly, because you're making smart moves, that's going to save a lot of headaches and heartaches of someone stumbling around trying to get it done on their own. Is that something that you find that you deliver for your clients?
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I've had situations where some founders, particularly non-technical founders, and even in some cases technical founders, they have a good idea and they sort of, go about building it using hit and trial methods, and they end up spending a lot of money and resources. And the worst thing that can happen is, like, their idea gets validated, they get traction, because in many cases what happens is their solution is not up to the mark, even though their idea is, because the execution was not done very well. And when they have customers breathing down their neck and their software doesn't work, that's a very, very tough situation. So I've helped many companies in this situation where their software was not working. They had investors, they had, customers. They needed to deliver something. There was no way out. So, I had to sort of, look at their situation and salvage whatever they had and put everything together to get them on the track once again. So, yeah, I mean, experience counts a lot in this game. So I always recommend, like, if you have a chance, always go with the advisor who has done this before and who can guide you and give you right advice at the right time.
When you mentioned bootstrap, I want to ask you to clarify that a little, because I think some people could misinterpret what that means and think bootstrapping means having a business starting up with, zero money. But you're not saying that. You're saying let's make it as minimal as possible. Have that minimum viable product and then build from there. So what does bootstrapping actually look like?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it really so there are two big resources that go into a startup, right? One is time, one is money. So depending upon what you have in abundance, you try to use that and balance it. So first of all, bootstrapping, from what my definition is, like, you can start a startup with the money that you are comfortable losing. And you don't have to mortgage your house or anything like that. In terms of minimum investment required, as I said, like, if you have a lot of time, you can even start with almost $0 these days. Practically, to start a startup, all you need is a computer, internet connection, and maybe a cell phone. And you can start audiobooks recording business. You can start a podcast business, digital marketing business. So all these businesses, they don't need any kind of investment or capital expenditure. but it takes time. So if you don't have any investment, it'll take time to get traction, get customers. But if you have some money, that can expedite your like how soon you can get traction. And that being said, like let's say if you want to build something more complicated, like an app or something like that, that definitely needs some investment. And for a decent app to launch and design and everything, it may range from anywhere from $10,000 and up. But that's in contrast with a lot of people who think that launching an app means multi-million-dollar project.
Exactly. And I think that you would bring to the table some of the lessons learned that you have experienced in your career with working with other clients as well as yourself. So, here's a shortcut. Here's a way to save this. Here's a way to optimize that. So that's the benefit of bringing someone like yourself into the mix. Can you think of an example of a time you've worked with a company where they've, what specifically did you do or deliver where a company thought, wow, I thought I was going to have a $100,000 investment, and now you've shown me a clear path forward to do this startup, and it was going to be dramatically less. What did that look like, and then what was the reaction of that client? Because I'm sure they were just shocked.
Sure. I was working with a first-time duo of entrepreneurs. They were young girls. They wanted to launch a rideshare app. And they belong to Vancouver, where I am, so local. And they got a quotation for their app for about $350,000. And they got a timeline of about 9 to 10 months to launch. And they were all set to sort of, as I said earlier, they were all set to take a second mortgage on their house and pay this company to build their app. And when they met me, I said, okay, let me look into this and figure out how I can optimize your resources. So I worked with an outsourced team, put it together for them, and we were able to launch the same app within 6 months at around $30,000. So that's 10% of the cost, and almost 50% faster than what the original timeline was. And obviously, the founders were really happy, and they had quite a bit of money left over from their budget to invest in marketing and things like that.
Which the interesting thing is with that fee that you charged, there was a profit margin for you because you don't work for free. So you were really able to source some great outsourcers and resources. But the thought crosses my mind, I would love to have been a fly on the wall to heard the conversation when you said, hey, you remember that $300,000 quote? I can do it for 1/10 of that. What was the reaction, and was there an element of, I don't trust you? Now, obviously they did because you did the project and you delivered, but was there a feeling of, that doesn't sound right, it's just so low?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was definitely, a feeling of joy and a lot of things and everything. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible for delivering what I said I deliver. And then I have I'm not new in this industry, so I have a good track record of 20 years. So I just said, okay, let's give it a shot, and then if there's anything wrong along the way, just let me know. If you're not satisfied with the execution, they were happy to kick things off, and within a week they started seeing results. So whatever sort of apprehension they had was gone within a
quickly gone. Mainly because you could prove your track record and even probably point to some case studies, testimonials from people you've worked with in the past, and so that. But that just goes to show you that. Boy, they were ready to pull the trigger for that higher price package, thinking that that's how things were. And I'll bet that if you were to pinpoint what all the other things that they were able to accomplish with the saved money, they are so far down the path than what they would have been, because you saved them that amount of money and then they applied it to, very profitable next actions in their company.
Exactly. And not only they saved money, but they saved time, because in this game time is in some cases even more important than money. So they were able to launch the app ahead of time, and there was a certain schedule they wanted to meet, a deadline for a university summer vacation and sort of semester end and whatnot. So they were able to meet that deadline even while saving 90% of the investment. So that was another factor.
That's a really big point. So why should someone consider bootstrapping or working with someone like yourself rather than looking for venture capitalists or angel investors?
Sure. Okay. So this is my favorite topic to talk about. I mean, see, angel investors and VCs are good, but when I work with founders, in my experience, when they go to VCs too early, they end up giving too much of their company to the VCs. In some cases, even up to 50% of their company, because they don't have anything to bargain with. They are so desperate to get capital. And on the flip side, if they just can put together some resources and bootstrap their company, and then they get traction and they get some revenue, then they have a huge bargaining chip when they go to VCs and raise capital, because now they have proven their concept, right? And in many cases, once they cross that threshold of getting their first dollar in terms of real revenue, they can realize that they don't actually need outside money. They can just continue building the company on their own and retain all the equity in their company. Most of the entrepreneurs, they are driven by freedom, not having to answer to someone. But if they take the money from VCs too early, they're practically just employees of the VCs, because they have to comply with their demands, their regulations, their interferences in some cases. So that's why I always recommend try to bootstrap, don't give away your equity. And then when you get traction, if you think that's a sound business decision to expand your business, you can go to the VC and then get funding at a very, very favorable term. Hello?
Yes, get funding at a very favorable rates at that point, right?
That's right. So instead of giving away 50% of your equity, you can get away by giving maybe 10% for much bigger investment.
So what do you find, let's just kind of wrap up with this last thought. What do you find is the biggest mistake that potential founders of startups make when considering moving forward with their startup? Of course, one could be, they're looking at conventional or VC, but once they start zeroing in on some of their objectives, what do you find is one of the biggest mistakes people make? And then how can they avoid that?
Yeah, so one of the most common mistakes I've seen, even smart businessmen and seasoned businessmen make when they start their startups, is they start building their product or a service for themselves. So they put their own sort of the way that they look at the world, and they basically cater to their own demands, their own desires with their product, rather than focusing on their customer. So, a good example is, sometimes founders are too, they are too attracted to design and sexy looks and things like that, and they end up spending a lot of time and investment in just polishing the look and feel of their app or whatever their idea is. Whereas for the customer, it's a huge pain point, and the customer does not really care about extreme amount of sexiness or look and feel. They just want their regular business problem to be solved. So rather than focusing on that problem, the founders end up spending too much time in satisfying their own desires. So this is one common thing that I've seen. So you should always focus on the customer, and if the customer wants, sexy look and feel, by all means go with it. But if the customer wants, just wants a plain, simple user interface, and they want their problem solved, then focus on that first, because you'll get faster traction, you'll get revenue, and then you can add bells and whistles later on when when you have some spare time and resources.
That's awesome. Well, Manuj, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Give us a little link or way to connect with you and learn more about how someone could learn about your services or anything that you have going on with your podcast or upcoming projects.
Sure. I have a podcast as well called Bootstrapping Your Dreams. Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. You can find it on iTunes. So we talk about similar issues there. And then if you want to get in touch with me, my website is tetranoodle.com. So it's just make sure it's not noodles. Many people mistake it as noodles. So it's tetranoodle singular.com. And if you want to check out my training courses, it's courses.tetranoodle.com.
Excellent. Well, Manuj, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.